CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello and welcome to Global Business Europe, live from CGTN in London. I'm Robin Dwyer.
And I'm Juliet Mann. Our top stories. European disunion. Hungary's ban on what it calls promotion of homosexuality is condemned by 13 of its EU allies.
UEFA rejects calls to move the Euro 2020 final away from Wembley over concern at high levels of COVID-19.
What a waste. An investigation finds Amazon is destroying brand new goods on a vast scale.
And Spain's Prime Minister pardons 9 politicians jailed for sedition in a bid to resolve the ongoing conflict in Catalonia.
A number of EU nations have condemned Hungary over a new law which bans what it calls the display and promotion of homosexuality to under 18s.
13 of the EU's 27 member states signed a joint statement expressing outrage over the legislation, including Germany, the Netherlands, Sweden, France and Ireland, with Sweden calling it grotesque. Penny Liersch joins us now from Budapest. So, Penny, Hungary's facing a growing backlash over the ban. What's the latest?
Well, in the last few hours, we have seen that statement signed by the 13 countries. As you said, they've called it a flagrant example of discrimination based on sexual orientation, gender identity and expression. Now, that's very strong words from these EU countries as they were holding an Article 7 disciplinary procedure hearing around this new law that Hungary has passed exactly a week ago. It bans the portrayal of any sort of gender change or homosexuality to anyone aged under 18 in Hungary through schools and through the media. Now, it's been heavily criticised by human rights groups in Hungary. There's been thousands of people protesting on the eve of the bill being voted on and then the next night after it had passed through into legislation as well. EU ministers were quick to condemn it, as we've heard in that statement, but also previously through social media they were quick to speak out as it was voted in last week. Let's have a listen to Germany's Europe Minister Michael Roth a little earlier today before they went into that Article 7 hearing.
The recent decisions of the Hungarian Parliament are, from our point of view, a great burden because they clearly violate our EU values. Respectful treatment of minorities, including sexual minorities, should be beyond doubt. And of course, we will join this initiative today. There is no dispute. We must send a clear signal today.
So what's Hungary's response been to this?
Well, Robin, we have seen Hungary very strongly defending the legislation ever since it came into being. They say it's about protecting children and it's up to parents to decide how their children are educated up to their age of 18. However, this bill, it's been criticised on many different levels, not only for being discriminatory towards the LGBTQ+ community, but also that it was put in as part of a wide-reaching paedophilia bill that criminalises paedophilia. So there's been serious concerns about these two issues being linked in law. And there's also been media and broadcasters speaking out about their concerns that it means content will be censored, that certain television shows and ads could no longer be shown under this law. But as I said, the Hungarian government, the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister have been very strongly defending this decision and the law coming into place in Hungary. Let's have a listen to Peter Szijjártó, Hungary's Foreign Minister, a little earlier today.
The law protects the children in a way that it makes as an exclusive right of the parents to educate their kids regarding sexual orientation until the age of 18. So this law doesn't say anything about sexual orientation of adults. Doesn't say anything about it. It only says that as long as the kids are under the age of 18, the education of theirs regarding sexual orientation is the exclusive right of the parents. That's it.
Now, we've since seen this statement come out condemning Hungary's stance and this legislation coming into power. But when it comes to EU sanctions, we're yet to see anything in that regard in terms of Hungary violating the core values of the European Union, and we could still see sanctions brought against Hungary. Hungary and Poland are both no stranger to having blows with the European Union when it comes to the freedom of the press in the countries, judicial independence, and now this as well. So there certainly could be more to come, and Hungary's also heading towards an election next year too. So that's seen to be playing well into this new legislation, and we are likely to see a lot more in the next few months. Robin?
Penelope Liesch, thank you very much.
The row over Hungary's new law is spilling over into Euro 2020. European football's governing body UEFA says it will not allow Munich's Allianz Arena to be lit up in rainbow colours for Wednesday's game between Germany and Hungary. UEFA deemed the move to be political in nature, having previously ruled against what it says are political statements. The mayor of Munich said he wanted to make a visual statement against the Hungarian legislation and called UEFA's decision shameful.
Wir werden uns in München aber auf gar keinen Fall davon abhalten lassen.
We in Munich certainly won't let ourselves be discouraged from sending a clear signal to Hungary and the world that we in Munich will not be impressed by this. On Wednesday, we will raise rainbow flags on City Hall, we will illuminate the wind turbine in the immediate vicinity of the Allianz Arena and also the Olympic Tower.
UEFA is also facing growing calls to move the Euro 2020 final away from London as cases of the Delta variant continue to rise in the UK. Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi has called for the match to be played in Rome, while Angela Merkel said UEFA must act responsibly over crowd numbers if the match stays at Wembley.
But the UK government has just announced that it is increasing the number of fans allowed to attend the semi-finals and the final to 75% capacity. That's more than 60,000 people. It comes ahead of crunch games involving Scotland and England, with both squads affected by COVID-19. Guy Henderson is outside Wembley Stadium for us. Hi there, Guy. Now, a lot to talk about, and most of it actually away from the pitch. So how much pressure is UEFA under to move the final out of the UK?
Well, UEFA had wanted to try and persuade the United Kingdom to let in fans from abroad for both the semi-final and the final, which had been due to take place here in Wembley. And that's despite the fact that coronavirus cases have been rising across the country quite rapidly. Leaders from some of the participating countries at Euro 2020, particularly some of the countries favoured to reach the latter stages of the competition, had then begun to ask the question, well, should the match really be played here or should it be relocated somewhere else?
Yes, I will try to stop the final being held in a country where infections are rising quickly.
I hope UEFA will be responsible. I don't think it would be good if there were full stadiums there. I support the efforts of the British government in having the necessary hygiene measures in place, but it's a virus variant area, and that means travel will be very restricted.
We still want those games to take place here at Wembley. This is UK Health Minister Matt Hancock talking a short while ago.
The final's set to be at Wembley. I was at Wembley on Friday night. It was great to hear the noise of the crowds again. And this is obviously something that that Oliver Dowden, the Culture Secretary, is working closely with UEFA on. But I think we've got a great setup.
So the UK now says it's going to allow 60,000 fans up to into Wembley for that semi and for the final. UEFA has responded positively to that offer. What we don't know yet, of course, is which fans from where will be allowed into that stadium.
Guy, explain the situation we have now in the England and the Scotland squads ahead of tonight's games.
So, shortly after the last fixture that took place here at Wembley between England and Scotland, the Scottish midfielder Billy Gilmour had tested positive for coronavirus. So he is now set to miss Scotland's game against Croatia, which is due to start a little later up in Glasgow. He'll be self-isolating. But he had also come into close contact with two members of the England squad, Ben Chilwell and Mason Mount, and that means that they are also self-isolating. They will miss England's game here against the Czech Republic. just a single case so far in the Scotland squad, so no wider outbreak, but obviously that is the big fear amongst all of the squads taking part in this competition, that you might have a spread either within a squad or even between squads on match day that might then seriously hamper those teams' chances.
Guy, I've got to ask you about the football just very quickly. The final games in Group D. How's the atmosphere at Wembley? And what do all the teams need to do to get through to the next round?
Good atmosphere here, but actually both these teams have already qualified for the knockout stages, and in fact whoever wins this game and tops this group will potentially have a very tough fixture afterwards in the form of the runners-up from a group which includes France, Germany and Portugal. I think the really electric atmosphere we're going to see is up in Glasgow for that Scotland game against Croatia. There can be 3 teams that qualify from this group stage, so both Scotland and Croatia are still in with a chance. They have everything to play for.
Guy Henderson at Wembley, thank you very much.
The UK is beginning negotiations to join a free trade pact with Asia-Pacific countries in the wake of Brexit. Members of the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership include Australia, Canada and Vietnam, and the group represents a market of 500 million people. The UK government's hoping a deal will open new markets for its service industries and lower tariffs on exports such as cars and whiskey. A Deutsche Bank executive and former EY partner who was in charge of auditing Wirecard has taken legal action to stop being named in a German parliamentary report into the scandal. Andreas Lütscher was in charge of the technology company's audits between 2015 and 2017. Wirecard collapsed in 2020 after executives admitted that $2.3 billion it had reported as assets probably never existed. The final report into the scandal will be discussed in Parliament on Friday. Bitcoin has fallen below $30,000 for the first time since January. The leading cryptocurrency has now lost all of its gains for the year. It remains under pressure from China's crackdown on currency mining. Beijing has also restricted trading channels for Chinese residents. The dating app Bumble is giving its staff a week's paid holiday to deal with burnout and stress. Bumble, which was valued at $10 billion when it floated on the New York stock market earlier this year, has told its 700 employees to take time out to focus on themselves.
You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, YouTube wins a key legal battle against the EU, but regulators open another probe against its parent company.
Search CGTN Europe wherever you get your podcasts to subscribe to The Agenda podcast. The Agenda with me, Stephen Cole, always gets to the heart of the story. Just subscribe today and listen now.
Covering the world from 4 continents. A new horizon. Teams in Beijing, Washington, D.C., Nairobi, and London. Who connect, interact, and inquire to bring you the stories that matter to all. The Link, only on CGTN. Facing the unknown is always difficult. In a world in turmoil, it's easy to lose orientation. But when the storms come, we have to see the possibilities. Reinvent. Find new opportunities. Discover a path forward. CGTN. See the difference. The world has changed under the pressure of the pandemic. For many of us, life is returning to some kind of normal. As
as we're adapting to changes in all of our lives, let Global Business Europe be your guide to the new normal. Join us weekdays on CGTN.
Welcome back. YouTube has won the latest round of a long-running legal battle with the European Union over copyright infringement.
CGTN's Tony Waterman is following the story from Brussels. Hello to you, Tony. So how big a victory is this for YouTube, and what does it mean for the platform?
Well, Robin, as you know, YouTube and other online platforms have long tussled with artists and musicians over fair competition. So on the surface, this does appear to be a victory because the EU's top court said that they are not necessarily liable for the unauthorized content that their users may upload to their websites. But when you dig a little bit deeper into this ruling, they are not completely off the hook, because the court also said that if they have knowledge that this type of illegal content is on their site and they don't act quickly to either take it down or block it, then they are liable for it. So a couple of things going on there. Of course, this raises some questions about what is proof of knowledge. Would a simple email from one of these artists saying that their content is up on the site illegally without their consent do the trick? Also, what constitutes as quickly taking this down? So there are a lot of unanswered questions still, but certainly YouTube playing this off as a victory today, saying in a statement that it is a leader in copyright, that it has invested heavily in copyright tools, which have in fact created a new revenue stream for these artists. And it said that it has given out $4 billion in compensation to the music industry alone in the past year. So very much saying that they're a leader in this field. Important to note here, though, that this ruling was looking at old EU copyright law. And earlier this year, the Commission did put forward some reforms, one of them being that Facebook, YouTube, other online platforms would have to install filters which would block users from sharing illegal content. It's unclear how today's ruling could potentially impact those reforms, but certainly this issue is not going anywhere anytime soon.
Meanwhile, Tony, we have YouTube's parent company, Google, facing another legal challenge from the EU. What can you tell us?
Well, after 2 years of an informal investigation, the EU announced today that it has launched a formal probe into allegations that Google has been abusing its dominant spot in the online advertising space to the detriment of its rival. What specifically they are concerned about are these online display advertising technology. It's really a mouthful, but we're all familiar with what we're talking about here. This is the online banners, the displays that are at the top of your screen, on the side of your screen, the videos that pop up when you're browsing a website or on your mobile. What they want to know is whether or not Google is giving preferential treatment to its own technology, especially on YouTube, which of course we know that it owns. They also want to see if Google has been restricting the access to third parties when it comes to user data. Take a listen, though, to what they had to say when they made the announcement earlier today.
We opened today a formal antitrust investigation to assess whether Google has violated our EU competition rules by favouring its own online display advertising technology services in the so-called ad tech supply chain. Our investigation will focus on display advertising, where Google offers a number of services both to advertisers and publishers.
And the online advertising space is a huge market. In the EU alone, it was nearly $25 billion in 2019, and it's only been growing since then. So this is an investigation and a probe that is going to look into a lot of questions that have not been asked yet, to try to find some answers, to try to, in the Commission's words, level the playing field.
Tony Waterman, thanks for updating us.
An investigation in the UK has revealed that millions of brand new and unused items are simply being thrown away by Amazon. As the internet giant launches its Prime Day discounts, ITV News discovered items like Dyson fans and vacuum cleaners, even MacBooks and iPads are deliberately being destroyed.
Amazon has defended its business model, insisting it's working towards zero waste. But the British Prime Minister says the government will look at the issue. CGTN's Paul Barber has the details.
This is one of Amazon's biggest UK warehouses in Dunfermline, Scotland, and from inside where millions of perfectly good products each year are sent to be destroyed. Secret footage captured in what's known as the destruction zone, and what calls into question the company's environmental and ethical practices. As the UK's ITV News investigation reveals, unsold laptops scanned not for delivery, but instead marked destroy. Boxes full of electrical items, such as drills, shavers, headphones, even smart TVs. The list goes on. Brand new books, still in their wrappers, or jewellery, or steel cutlery, with that same instruction: destroy. One former employee who wishes to remain anonymous reveals the scale of what they're asked to do.
So from a Friday to a Friday, our target was approximately 130,000 items a week. I gasped. There's no rhyme or reason to what gets destroyed. Dyson fans, Hoovers, the occasional MacBook or iPad. Or the other day, 20 bins filled with thousands of COVID masks still in their plastic wrappers. Overall, I'd say 50% of all items seem to be unopened and still in their shrink wrap. The other half are returns, but in good condition.
Undercover filming shows a manager's spreadsheet from April at the Dunfermline depot. 124,000 items to destroy that week. Amazon does donate to charity, but over the same period, that figure was just 27,000. The longer goods remain unsold, the more a vendor is charged to store them, until it often becomes uneconomical. So they're loaded onto pallets, again marked destroy, before leaving the warehouse in lorries. This one containing electrical items, ending up at a waste management centre. Behind the tarpaulin, the huge amount of unwanted goods is revealed. The pallets removed one by one. Several such loads can leave the depot every day. Another lorry was filmed carrying non-electrical items. Its destination, a landfill site, only a few miles away from where they'd been stored, and, in the main, still perfectly usable. What's happening is not illegal, and the company admits to doing it. But in a statement, Amazon said, "We're working towards a goal of zero product disposal, and our priority is to resell, donate to charitable organisations, or recycle any unsold products. No items are sent to landfill in the UK. As a last resort, we will send items to energy recovery, but we're working hard to drive the number of times this happens down to zero." Environmental groups have condemned what they call the unnecessary waste and Amazon's business model's reliance on disposal culture. And now the British Prime Minister is promising to investigate.
Sounds incredible to me, and an indictment of a consumerist society if it's as you say. We'll look into it. Obviously, we don't like stuff going to landfill under any circumstances.
Come November, the UK is hosting the largest ever climate conference in Glasgow, just 40 miles over the water there. Both countries and companies have much to work on. Paul Barber, CGTN, London.
Well, let's go to our bargain hunter in residence at the New York Stock Exchange, John Terrett, to find out what the markets make of Amazon's sales bonanza and more. Good to see you, John. Well, look, Amazon Prime Day is underway. We've just heard about that incredible investigation. But meanwhile, Jeff Bezos is going to be stepping down soon as boss. So is it going to go out on a high note or not?
Well, hey, Juliet. Hey, Robin. You know, I'm amazed. That story by Paul Barber, wow, that's good, isn't it? I can't believe it. I'm wondering whether they do the same thing here in America or whether that's a European thing or a UK thing. I simply don't know. We'll have to look into that, maybe. Plenty of news about Amazon. Of course, when you are as big as Amazon is, you always attract controversy. I mean, we had yesterday yet another investigation into Apple, and they're doing it into Amazon as well, over in Germany. And of course here the big issue for us recently has been the union in Bessemer in Alabama where people wanted to set up a union, and Amazon was very, very much against it and spent millions and millions of dollars trying to stop that, and indeed they were successful. They say, look, you know, we've created all these jobs in Alabama where there were once no jobs. We pay the highest wages in the area, and we offer benefits. And then the staff say, well, you know, that's all very well, but you give us 5 minutes to go to the bathroom, and the plant is half a mile long. We can't get back, and then you penalise us. So that's the kind of stuff that we've been dealing with here in America. But that Paul Barber story is amazing. But Amazon's never far from the news headlines, and so it is today, because today is the last day in the C-suite for Jeff Bezos, the man who founded Amazon 27 years ago, back in 1994. And he began by shipping books only, because he figured that books are obviously very easy to ship. Of course, it's grown exponentially since then. He's leaving us today in the middle of what we know as Amazon Prime Day. So it's actually 2 days now, as you well know. It was yesterday, Monday, and today, Tuesday. Now, the figures for last year show that Amazon Prime Day, with all these incredible bargains that are suddenly available, pulled in around $10 billion. But that is dwarfed by China's Singles Day, in which JD.com and Alibaba pulled in $115 billion for their days last year. JD.com, by the way, stands for Jingdong.com. That's when the Chinese ring the bell. They go Jingdong. That's what JD.com stands for. So today, Andy Jassy is the man in charge of the company for the very first time. He's taken over the whole company from AWS, which is Amazon's very important cloud business. And Bezos is going off to pursue his own dreams, including going into space with his brother Mark on Blue Origin on July the 20th. And just finally, I hope we have time for this, but if anybody's offended by this, then I'm sorry. But we think it's actually quite amusing, because there are 2 petitions out there trying to prevent Jeff Bezos from coming back from space. One is called the petition to not allow Jeff Bezos re-entry to Earth, and the other one is called do not allow Jeff Bezos to return to Earth. And just over 60,000 people have signed those petitions. And what it's about is they basically think that there should be no billionaires on Earth, never mind in space. But if they choose to go to space, they should stay there. I think that's quite funny.
John, look, you're talking about the stuff of Jeff Bezos' dream. So how about the stuff of yours? Because we're expecting more from the chair of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, about the US economy shortly, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. A lot of people wish Jerome Powell would go into space. They really do right at the moment. And there's a good reason for that, because there's a lot of talk and confusion about inflation here. Look, he was due to testify before a House panel on the issue of the economy and COVID. So he's doing it virtually. He won't be on Capitol Hill. He'll be doing it from wherever he is in the country. He'll be testifying today in just under 2 hours' time before the House Select Subcommittee on the coronavirus crisis. But inflation dominates, and so he's going to be asked about that. They always prepare some remarks which are published first. So they read those, and then the questions get asked by the various members of Congress. In the prepared remarks, Jerome Powell talks about a sustained improvement in the economy, and he sees a notable rise in inflation. And the problem is that people worry that he hasn't really got a handle on inflation. This comes after James Bullard, the president of the St. Louis Federal Reserve, said on Friday that he thought interest rates would have to go up in 2022 far, far earlier than the Fed has been indicating. The markets tanked. They came back yesterday. I think most people now, Juliet, have come to the conclusion that we're going to see some major change in policy from the Federal Reserve when they next meet in July. They skip August, and then they'll take it on in September. That won't be an interest rate increase, but a change in the tone, change in what they say regarding inflation. I think taking it much more seriously than they have done up till now. Juliet?
Take the diary, that's for sure. John Terrett, thanks very much.
Coming up on Global Business Europe, the UK may be relaxing some of its coronavirus restrictions, but could masks be here to stay?
The EU's digital COVID certificate, which offers the promise of unlocking hassle-free travel around Europe this summer.
In less than 2 weeks' time, the Czech border will also open to all EU and Serbian citizens. 4.4 million Hungarians received their first dose of COVID vaccine.
18 and over can receive a COVID-19 vaccination, but it does come with conditions.
Third wave will probably take longer to emerge. This vaccination centre is part of a massive effort to try and drive down the numbers of the new variant that was first identified in India.
On the agenda with me, Stephen Cole, we look up into space. We look down into data. We look at debt. We look at politics. We look at opioids, climate change. We look at all the issues that really matter around the world. But you matter too. We want to tell the stories you want to see and hear about. Make it your agenda.
Roger, Ricky, loud and clear.
We can try out the wild and crazy ideas.
Nothing can stop an idea whose time is coming. This idea is coming.
I actually feel quite comfortable in isolation.
We should all be very basic when we try to save the world.
We hope it will happen. We have to live in hope.
The agreement is signed. But what is the real deal now the UK has left the EU? For trade, for business, for the city, for ordinary people. Make sense of Brexit with CGTN.
Welcome back to Global Business Europe with Juliet Mann and me, Robin Dwyer. Our top stories. European disunion. Hungary's ban on what it calls promotion of homosexuality is condemned by 13 of its EU allies.
UEFA rejects calls to move the Euro 2020 final away from Wembley over concern at high levels of COVID-19.
And what a waste. An investigation finds Amazon is destroying brand new goods on a vast scale. China has hit back at criticism from a group of mainly Western nations at the United Nations Human Rights Council. More than 40 countries signed a statement calling on Beijing to allow the UN to go to China's Xinjiang region and look into allegations of torture and forced labour. The joint statement was read out by the Canadian ambassador. Countries including France, Germany and the UK also signed the statement.
In response, China's permanent mission to the UN in Geneva issued a joint statement on behalf of nearly 20 other countries. It says the group of countries are gravely concerned about baseless accusations by certain countries using human rights as a means to interfere in the internal affairs of other countries. It is severely violating the purposes and principles of the Charter of the United Nations while turning a blind eye to their own serious human rights problems. The statement asks for the UN Human Rights Council to keep functioning in accordance with the framework of the Charter of the United Nations, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights.
Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has pardoned 9 leaders of the pro-independence Catalan movement. The group's been in jail over the past 3 years following a failed referendum which called for Catalonia to break away from the rest of Spain. Let's talk now to Rahul Pathak, who joins us from Madrid. So, Rahul, remind us why this is happening now.
Well, Robin, we had Catalan state elections just a few months ago, and the big winners in those state elections were the more moderate Catalan parties. Now, Pedro Sanchez is going to be having talks with the new administration later this month, and I think he sees these pardons as a kind of olive branch heading into those negotiations. But this is still a massively divisive issue here in Spain. So for the Prime Minister personally, it's one heck of a gamble. Here's my report. Taking the first step, the words of Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez ahead of approving the pardon of 9 jailed Catalan separatist leaders. Sanchez said this was the only way the country could move on from the events of 2017, when a bid for Catalan independence almost ripped Spain apart.
The people in prison were never punished for their ideas, but for their acts contrary to democratic legality. A strong democracy like ours does not ask anyone to renounce their ideas, but demands that all ideas must be defended within the framework of legality and with respect to the rights of all Spaniards.
The 9 leaders have been in prison for between 3 and 2 years following a referendum on Catalan independence that Madrid deemed illegal. The referendum coming about partly because there was a widespread belief in Catalonia, one of Spain's richest regions, that the central government in Madrid was taking far more in taxes than it gave back in investments. Now, this decision represents an almighty gamble by the Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez. On the one hand, you have many of the pro-Catalan independence movements who say the pardons don't go far enough. On the other, you have a recent poll that found that 60% of Spaniards said that the freeing of the activists and politicians was wrong.
As I see it, they've got away with it. If someone breaks the law and doesn't have a punishment, he can do whatever he wants again. They may go even further. They can push it to the limits.
They have been in prison for some years now, and they're going to be forgiven the years left, because it is a very high sentence, the sentence they had. So I feel it is a necessary step to break with this situation that is leaving Catalonia in a mess.
After having gone to trial, having been accused, having been in jail, now it is like all of this wasn't worth it.
Spain's main opposition Popular Party has gone so far as to describe Sanchez's actions as appeasement. They say they will challenge the pardons in court. As for the Prime Minister, he'll be hoping this olive branch will, in time, quell the flames of full-on Catalan independence.
So, Rahul, your report suggests this pardon doesn't really have much support on either side of the debate. Do you think this is likely to change?
Pedro Sanchez, the Prime Minister, certainly hopes so. I think he hopes over time that views will become less entrenched on both sides of the debate. And if he can be seen as the Spanish Prime Minister who helped solve the Catalan issue, that will be a huge boost for him personally ahead of expected general elections in 2 years' time. He certainly needs one because currently he and his party are trailing in the polls. So to use a football analogy with Euro 2020 going on, I think Pedro Sanchez is very much playing the long game. Back to you.
Rahul Pathak in Madrid. Thank you.
British holidaymakers who have had both COVID vaccines and are returning from an amber list destination could be exempt from having to quarantine at home for 10 days. The new quarantine rules could be revealed by the British government on Thursday and would come into effect as early as August. CGTN's Andrew Wilson has more. Good to see you, Andrew. So does it look like quarantine will be lifted in time for August summer holidays?
Well, I think even August, as far as the travel industry is concerned, is way too late. I mean, Europe is starting its EU COVID passport certificates 1st of July, they hope. So there's a lot of pressure on the government to come up with something. And this is still speculation. Matt Hancock, the Health Secretary, was quizzed about this today. He said this hasn't been clinically advised yet. We're working on it, which throws an element of doubt on the speculation that we could, as early as 2 days' time here, that quarantine could be removed for people with double vaccinations. What they're talking about is the amber level countries. So that's Portugal, Spain, Italy, France, all the countries where Brits like to go in the summer. And at the moment, if you go to those, travel is not advised. And when you come back, you have to have 2 tests on day 2 and day 8. And you have to self-quarantine for 10 days. They're saying that they may change the rules so that people can have that time without having to quarantine. But it gets more complicated because what about the children in a family on holiday? What about some of the adults have been vaccinated, some of them haven't? There's all sorts of different ways. How can you verify their vaccinations? There has to be a system in place. So I think there's a little way to go before people can start cheering and packing their bags for a holiday.
OK, I won't get my suitcase out the loft then. Scotland is pushing back its opening up, though. What's been decided there?
So things have been pushed back, just like Freedom Day, as it was called, the 21st of June, it was pushed back by the government until the middle of July, the 19th of July. So the Scottish government, Nicola Sturgeon, has come online today at the Parliament and said that she's also pushing back those dates. So 19th of July now, Scotland is planned to go down to what they call zero-level restrictions, which is similar to what we had in the UK, or have at the moment up until now. So they've got another 3 or 4 weeks on the UK, with a view to full restrictions being lifted in August. Now, all this reflects the concerns they've got about this Delta variant and its spread in Scotland as well in the UK. Scotland is trailing a little bit behind the UK in its release dates now, but they've had the figures of infections are 7 times higher than they were last month, and that's 40% higher than they were last week. So still there's something of an exponential growth going on in the Delta variant in Scotland. So all this is provisional. However, it does seem that Scotland is mirroring mirroring England in its date and data, so there could be some sort of operating in tandem there, but it does look like Scots are going to have to wait at least until the 9th of August before their freedoms get drastically increased.
Andrew Wilson, thank you for the update.
So, with the UK relaxing some of its coronavirus restrictions, some are asking how much longer will they have to wear a mask. In England, it's compulsory to wear one in shops and on public transport, but not when working out in the gym, in the classroom or while seated at restaurants. Nicole Johnston has more from London.
These days, you don't see many people wearing masks outdoors in the UK. More than 3/4 of adults have received their first dose of a vaccine, and for some, the masks are down.
They're no longer required in secondary schools in England, which has been quite controversial at a time when you've still got infections in the community. I think as we look ahead, there are a number of countries in the world that whose populations will wear face coverings routinely.
But if you want to get your nails done inside, the British government says customers and staff have to wear a mask. And at this stage, vaccine or no vaccine, it's unclear when that will change.
Yeah, I think it's possible that it becomes semi-normal. People are quite used to it already, and if we keep having waves, particularly in neighbouring countries, and once travel starts being more, becomes more common, then yeah, I could see us getting used to wearing masks in order to kind of protect each other.
I think it's a must, and it's part of our lives today, and I would like everyone to keep wearing them for the safety of us and others.
But inside pubs and restaurants, it's a different story. Staff wear masks, but customers don't while they're seated. The owner of this South London pub says eventually people should be allowed to decide for themselves whether or not they want to wear a mask.
I think people should make their own decisions about it, really. It'd be nice, with people moving between tables to have their masks on, but it's not for me to say, but I'll be wearing one.
So when you're inside a shop in the UK, you have to wear a mask, but outside you don't. The UK was one of the last countries in Europe to introduce mask wearing. And even after the first wave, only 1 in 5 people here said that they would wear a mask outside.
And experts believed people in the UK wouldn't wear a mask inside, but they were wrong.
Between 90 and 97% of people have said they're trying to wear a face covering, those that can, in the settings they're supposed to. So it's a really high level of compliance, way higher than we thought, even if they're maybe not wearing them properly, which we've all observed.
So for now, there are only a few ways to avoid wearing a mask here. Make sure you're always outside, in the gym or the pub. Nicole Johnston, CGTN, London.
German health authorities have sounded the alarm on the highly contagious Delta COVID variant now spreading across the UK, warning that it's not a question of if the strain comes to Europe, but when. Ryan Thompson reports from Frankfurt.
Inside this laboratory, scientists are carefully tracking the spread of new coronavirus variants. Positive tests sent by health agencies are sequenced by machines and then analyzed for viral clues about how common more infectious strains are.
In each color you see a different base. And so if we look at now here, this base is in red, is different from what it's supposed to be in the wild type.
Dr. Bjorn Rada and his team have seen the genetic makeup of Germany's COVID cases change time and time again over the past 6 months. The original strain of the virus was quickly overtaken by the Alpha variant, first identified in the UK in March, despite efforts to keep it at bay. The fear today is that the highly transmissible Delta variant, first discovered in India, could be next.
The amount of Delta variant has risen. We are now at about 6%, maybe even more. We haven't had the new data from this week yet, of course, but we are expecting it to grow further because it has grown already from 3 to 6% in a very short time, and we believe that it will continue to grow.
Such is the case in the United Kingdom. where the strain now accounts for 96% of new cases. After months in decline, new infections are on the rise, and reopening schedules have been pushed back to give more time to inoculate more people. German health authorities are monitoring the situation in the UK very carefully. There's no new restrictions on public life so far, but they are sounding the alarm, warning that it's only certain that the Delta variant becomes common here.
We must closely watch this development because it depends on our behaviour and how we implement the coronavirus prevention measures. It is not a question of if Delta will become dominant, but a question of when.
Economies are reopening in Germany and across Europe. In many places, most restrictions are set to expire by the beginning of July. Vaccination campaigns are continuing too, but the unknown is whether enough jabs will be given before the Delta variant takes hold. Ryan Thompson, CGTN, Frankfurt.
A general election in Ethiopia has so far passed without incident. Long lines of voters were seen at many polling stations. The country's election board extended the window for casting ballots because so many people turned out. Opposition parties have made complaints of irregularities in 2 regions. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has said the election is the country's first free and fair vote after decades of repression. Jailed Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny has mocked a claim by Vladimir Putin that he consciously left Russia to get treatment in Germany. Navalny posted a picture on his lawyer's Instagram page which showed him on a stretcher and in a coma at the time of his departure and therefore not conscious. His German doctors say he was suffering from Novichok poisoning, which Navalny says was sanctioned by Putin. The Democratic People's Republic of Korea says the United States has foolishly raised its own hopes of restarting negotiations with Pyongyang. A new US envoy for possible talks has arrived in South Korea yesterday for key meetings with colleagues there and said he was hopeful change might be in the air. Earlier, DPRK leader Kim Jong-un's sister said such an expectation, quote, would plunge them into a greater disappointment. China's ambassador to the United States, Trey Tian-kai, will leave his post and return to China after 8 years of service. Trey made the announcement in a letter and hailed the achievements made in China-US ties over the past decade. But he stressed that relations are at a critical crossroads and the United States faces the choice between dialogue and conflict. China and New Zealand have reaffirmed their commitment to working towards stronger ties. During a video call, the 2 countries' foreign ministers agreed to step up cooperation in areas of common interest and strengthen dialogue where there are differences. New Zealand is facing increasing pressure from its Western allies to take a tougher stance on China over Xinjiang and Hong Kong. Last month, it voiced concerns over allegations of human rights violations in Xinjiang, which China denies. The Great Barrier Reef has become the latest bone of contention in the long-running diplomatic and strategic battle playing out between Australia and China. The UN now says the massive reef should be put on a danger list, which compiled by UNESCO, and China currently chairs that. But Australia has resisted the listing for years as it will cause a downturn in tourism. Canberra says Beijing is behind the move, but a spokesman for the Chinese government says the claims are defamation.
The COVID-19 outbreak may be putting much of university life on hold, but art graduates in Liverpool have found a novel way to hold their end-of-year exhibition. In homage to lockdown life, they're displaying their artworks online in a series of virtual refrigerators. Just open the door and welcome to the Edible Art Show. To see more, go to europe.cgtn.com. And remember, CGTN is available to watch for free on all the major digital platforms, on Smart TV or online on Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire and Android TV. You can also find us on YouTube and Dailymotion, as well as CGTN.com and the CGTN app. You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, a shopping paradise costing nearly $1 billion. We'll hear from the man in charge after this short break.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there. to see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London, China Global Television Network. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
Mari, what would you say is a good question?
Stephen, I'd say it's one where there's always more than one answer.
The Answers Project is a new podcast series from CGTN Europe. With me, Stephen Cole.
And me, Mari Beveridge. In each episode, we'll take a complex question.
And with the help of some of the world's foremost experts, shine light on some of the answers. So join us for The Answers Project.
Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back. Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte has threatened to arrest people who refuse to be vaccinated against COVID-19 and give them the jab by force.
But elsewhere in the country, local officials are using more creative and less extreme ways to tackle vaccine hesitancy. A chance to win sacks of rice, a cow or even a house are among the perks on offer. Gretchen Malalad has more from Manila.
This is one of the vaccination sites in the south of Manila. More than 1,000 people lined up to get their jabs. The city is now vaccinating the working class to curb COVID-19 transmission and help open up the economy. After vaccination, people flock to this corner to join a raffle where they have a chance to win a brand new house worth $30,000. There are also 2 motorcycles and grocery items up for grabs. Street vendor Tiborcio Orbico and his family joined the raffle after getting their jabs. Obrico says he's always out selling in the streets, so he needs protection from the virus. But the raffle convinced him to have his whole family vaccinated, so they will have more chances of winning.
We are just trying our luck. Who knows, we might win a house. We have been renting for a long time. Life is harder now and we can barely pay rent.
Representative Camille Villar is sponsoring the prizes. She said she was inspired by different efforts abroad, like the lottery in the U.S., where vaccinated residents can win $1 million.
We have seen a 50% pickup in the sign-up, and the pace continues to grow.
Vaccine hesitancy is a nationwide problem. Only 3 out of 10 Filipinos are willing to be vaccinated, according to a survey last month. The fear of side effects is the top reason for not wanting to get vaccinated.
There's news on TV that someone lost consciousness after getting vaccinated. I hear a lot of things like that.
The promise of an instant fortune or prizes has been a way for local leaders to lure people to get vaccinated. In the agricultural town of San Luis, Pampanga, residents who are mostly farmers can win a cow in a monthly raffle. Sacks of rice and groceries are also being raffled in different cities. Around 8 million Filipinos have now received their jabs. It's still far off from the government's target to vaccinate 50 to 70 million by the end of the year.
Well, that's CGTN's Gretchen Malalad reporting from Manila. Now, it took nearly 16 years and cost nearly $1 billion. LVMH has unveiled its flagship store in La Samaritaine, an 150-year-old department store in Paris. The luxury group hopes it will secure a big chunk of tourist spending after the pandemic. The CEO of the company's travel retailer, which is in charge of the project, told me why it's taken so many years to finish.
There's been a lot of work being done for LVMH to drive this massive renovation in the heart of Paris. Of course, there was some very important paperwork that needed to happen. But if we fast forward and we look only at the last 5 years, these were really the critical 5 years where all the engineers, all the architects, and all the know-how of so many collaborators have worked, tremendously. I was very, very lucky to be there yesterday for the inauguration, where the French president, President Emmanuel Macron, together with the chairman of LVMH, Mr. Bernard Arnault, both unveiled this opening of La Samaritaine, and the pride of all the teams who have been working for this project for so many years.
This isn't just a shopping experience, is it? Explain the concept.
It's not only about shopping. It's only about, amazing products. It's also about experiences. We have 12 restaurants. We have a spa. We have a hair salon. All of this punctuated also with capsules of experiences created by the brands, curated by the teams of La Samaritaine and DFS. And that was really creating a new place for people to live, to work, but also to come shop. And that's a really good opportunity.
But we're in the throes of a global pandemic. You're positioning this as a luxury emporium for big spenders. So where are your customers going to come from?
Well, I think that La Samaritaine is also a project that demonstrates mixicity. Of course, we have a unique assortment of luxury goods, but we also have the largest beauty hall in Europe. And as you know, beauty and cosmetics offers a wider range of prices. And we have those experiences with food and beverages. An épicerie from Maison Plisson, a juice bar, all sorts of, also an amazing assortment catering to the millennial customers. And this is in the newly renovated part of the building on Rue de Rivoli. And we hope that, of course, with the assortment, we will be able to rekindle with what consumers in Paris, the Parisians, used to enjoy back in the day when they were shopping in La Samaritaine and finding all sorts of things in this amazing store. And we want to also be generous in that sense and be inclusive as much as we can to creating this unique environment for those shoppers to come back to La Samaritaine.
So you mentioned there's some pockets of normality in the business. Where?
Well, I think the outlook for us at DFS is that the world is going to be separated into two big travel bubbles. One of them, of course, being China. And we've seen amazing success with our locations in Macau, where the customers have been able to go back and forth and really re-experiences and reappropriate the gallerias that we have in Macau. And that's been a really savior for DFS in Asia. And the second bubble that we're seeing is in Europe. I think that the new lifting of quarantines, the new lifting of travel bans from America, particularly into Europe, and the fact that Europeans can travel freely in almost every country now without having to produce too many constraints and passports of vaccinations, I think is a great opportunity for us to also cater to this customer. Now, when it comes to the outlook, I think that international traveling will probably resume more to a normalcy by the second quarter of 2022, and all our teams are gearing up for that.
The headlines again. European disunion. Hungary's ban on what it calls promotion of homosexuality is condemned by 13 of its EU allies.
UEFA rejects calls to move the Euro 2020 final away from Wembley over concern at high levels of COVID-19.
And what a waste. An investigation finds Amazon is destroying brand new goods on a vast scale.
Well, that's it for Global Business Europe. Thanks for watching. And there's more on all of our stories at europe.cgtn.com. Follow CGTN Europe on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram.
We're available to watch on smart TV apps such as Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire and Android TV. You can also find us on YouTube and Dailymotion, as well as CGTN.com and the CGTN app. Coming up next on CGTN, it's Africa Live. We'll see you again tomorrow, same time, same place. From all the team here in London, goodbye.
Goodbye.